And for the few people, let's say, that may not know of David Goggins yet, you describe your upbringing as having front row seats to a horror movie. If you could briefly give the people listening some context on that.
So what I was talking about with that one was my mom. And Can't Hurt Me, my mom was like, you're not going to put some of my life in this. But over a period of time, I'm like, Mom, this just wasn't your fucking life. I was a young kid watching you go through this shit. I was living it with you. And I didn't have the brain to absorb the adult life that you put my childlike brain in. So I lived it even more than you lived it. So I had to get my mom to a point where she'd even let me go here. So what I mean by that is I watched my mom and I was able to put all of my horror to the side, because when you're watching your mom go through horrific things, and I was never sheltered. It wasn't like my mom kept me from like my soon-to-be stepdad got murdered. It wasn't like she said, oh, we got to keep this from David. People tried to kill him several times before they finally killed him. And we continued going to this man's house. They tried to kill him in the garage that they finally shot him and killed him in. We were still going to the house where this man, they attempted to kill him, and we were going there almost every weekend. My mom just didn't give a fuck. And watching her get beat by my father, and then slowly watching her evolve into this woman who marries a guy that literally choked a woman to death and was in prison. And I'm watching all this shit unfold, and it was like watching a horror flick, and I was front row. Shit, I was part of the fucking director's crew. I mean, that's how close I was to the whole thing, man. It was crazy.
You state that when you're living in hell, the only way to find your way out is to confront the devil himself. Who was that devil for you?
It took several years for me to figure out who the devil was. And the devil was my father. The devil was my father, but what I didn't put and never finished was the devil really was me. So what happened was I put all this blame, and trust me, my father and a lot of people had to do with my upbringing, on how shitty it was. But like I put in that book, no one's going to come back and say, hey, man, I apologize. Maybe someone does. Very few people will. So at the end of the fucking day, when all things are said and done with, while my dad was the devil, and I believed that for a long fucking time, I had to confront him. And when I confronted the devil, so what I thought was the devil, I realized that I was the true devil. I was the one holding me back. I was the one looking for the scapegoat. And, I was the one looking for all these ways to say, it's okay, David. You're a loser. You're a born loser, so it's okay. And I was hoping my dad was going to give me that confirmation. And he was a loser himself. But at the end of the day, when I left there, I realized, well, shit, man, it's on me. My dad's fucked up. My mom's fucked up. The people around me are fucked up. They're not going to save you. You got to fucking save yourself, my friend. So that's when all that reality hit me when I went to Buffalo to see my dad on that drive home. I was like, man, this rest of your life is going to suck. It is going to suck, not because you're going to be a loser, but because you're going to fucking finally start to win. And winning is not easy, my friend.
It's interesting how, going into Never Finished, you think about how did David Goggins develop this work ethic and enter Sergeant Jack? Right? Because if there was, there was no Sergeant Jack, there may be no David Goggins. If you could elaborate on how he practiced discipline in his life.
Yeah, so Sergeant Jack, was my grandfather. He did 37 years in the military, and it wasn't like he just did 37 years in the military, man. This man retired from the military, and he pretty much made his own military. When he retired, that's when he became really hardcore, and he wore his uniform every day. When he retired, he wore that uniform every day. And I didn't know anything. I was some young kid that was tortured from my family, from my father. And I come in, when my mom left my father, we moved to Brazil, Indiana. My mom drives up, and I'm thinking I'm going to get some pity party from my grandparents. And Sergeant Jack looked at me, man, like I was a brand new recruit coming off the bus, man. He didn't give a fuck about what my dad did to me. He pretty much, without saying it, was like, look, young man, there's a lot of kids out there who live like you do, who have gone through what you've gone through. Maybe not as bad, but you're not the only one. and my grass needs to be cut, my cars need to be cleaned, the yard needs to be raked. He taught me a lot of lessons within the lesson of no one really gives a fuck. You have to continue to fucking live your life, or you can choose to be doomed and become a statistic. Like a lot of young people who fall back on their childhood when their childhood wasn't good. He never said any of this though. It was through his actions, by not feeling sorry for me, by how he worked me like a dog, that it came to me that this is what life is. Life is it's a training ground. And like going through Buds and Ranger School, very few people make it through. While you may live a long life, it doesn't mean you fucking graduated at the top of the class. You just lived a long, boring, despicable life. And that's not what I wanted to do. So Sergeant Jack started me out young, and I had to learn these lessons on my own through the discipline of hard work and cutting the grass and raking the leaves and doing all these things before school and after school. And he just built a mindset in me that I was like, okay, one day I can fall back on this. But I realized that Sergeant Jack taught me something that I'm going to have to go back to for the rest of my life.
And it seems like there's like a correlation between someone's level of discipline and the standards they set for themselves. There's a quote in the book when you say that when a half-assed job doesn't bother you, it speaks volumes about the kind of person you are. And until you start feeling a sense of pride and self-respect in the work you do, no matter how small or overlooked these jobs might be, you will continue to half-ass your life. Is that like Sergeant Jack inspired?
No, that was really me inspired. So like I said, Sergeant Jack just worked me to death. And the lessons, it wasn't like Mr. Miyagi. Like I said, he was my Mr. Miyagi, but it wasn't like one day I got pissed off, wax on, wax off. It wasn't like that shit. As I was doing this stuff, I started having different feelings. Like I would always like half-ass my work. And Sergeant Jack would always say, you know what, you're going to get it. You're going to do it until it's done right. So I got tired of continuously trying to get this white wall, this tiny little white wall on this black tire completely done. And then when I started realizing I'm wasting my time, just fucking get it done, or I'm gonna be out here in this fucking garage all day and night into the next day and night. And I said, you know what? Then when I started doing it the right time, first time, every time, Sergeant Jack never gave me like, hey, good job. He never said that. But I started knowing that I was doing good work. Because I wasn't doing it 20 times. I was doing it once. And then I started being like, my God, this feels fucking good. It feels fucking good to fucking get a job, have a task, and put my all into that task. And then be able to move on to the next task because I completed that task to the fullest and the greatest of my ability. And then that feeling just stuck with me. And I was like, okay, this is what I need every day in my life. I don't need someone to say, good job, David. I don't need a fucking pat on the back. Everything became internal. I started feeling this feeling I never had before. Like I thought I was a born loser. And just cleaning a tire and cleaning the car to the best of your ability changed everything. Raking a yard and not leaving one fucking leaf. Not one leaf. And then one would fall. And I would get that one leaf. It just became something that was like, okay, I see dirt, don't pass the dirt, clean the dirt. It just started absorbing. And before you know it, man, it just morphed into a man that was like, we got to get it done regardless.